Hi, my name is Rachel Garcia, and I'm the founder of Beyond Better. I'm a relationship coach, a longtime yoga practitioner, a martial artist, and I am interested in documenting the things that are on my mind through this channel in hopes that what I have to share may also benefit you. This is all material that has come from my own journey and the things that I have learned along the way through the various experiences that I've had growing up as a very strong, fearful avoidant attachment style with ADHD and CPTSD and other diagnoses. But I have come a really long way in my healing journey, and I would like to share the things that I have learned that may be of help to you. So, most of the healing that I have done has been through integrated attachment theory, which is a set of tools that work with your subconscious mind to heal insecure attachment patterns. Most people, I would say at least half of the people, are insecurely attached today. And that number roughly corresponds with the divorce rate. I do think that there are people who are insecurely attached who do manage to stay in long relationships, but that is most likely, in my opinion, because they have found somebody who seems to be a match for them in terms of their personality needs. Their most important personality needs align. And so it's easy to build a life around that stuff. But if you still have insecure attachment patterns, those things are still going to ripple out onto other areas of life, even if they are manageable in your romantic relationship. And so you might still find a lot of value in reprogramming the deeply held beliefs that you acquired in your attachment years, and thereby give yourself access to the very important needs that you have struggled to source in your life. It's a lot of big topics. So I will by and by talk about many of these, and hopefully it will be helpful. So today I want to talk about the value of being able to set relationship standards for yourself, to define your standards for relationships. We can talk about romantic relationships in particular, but you want to be able to set standards and define your non-negotiables for all types of relationships, even family and friends and work relationships. So, but let's just talk about romantic to keep it kind of streamlined. So there are 6 stages of relationships, and Susan Johnson is a relationship expert who defined 5 stages, and my teacher, Thais Gibson, broke the first stage into 2 stages. And so she defined it as there being a vetting stage or the dating stage is stage 1. Stage 2 is the honeymoon stage where there's some kind of commitment formed. Stage 3 is the power struggle stage where there's a lot more conflict as people become closer and more intimate, and their two inner worlds come into contact more and more deeply and more frequently in ways that force them to kind of negotiate the ways in which they see the world differently and experience the world differently. So the power struggle stage is a really big deal, but if we manage to make it through the power struggle stage, we get to the stability stage where things stabilize, the conflicts reduce, we really know each other, and there's a period of stability before we enter into the commitment stage. And this is said to be the stage in which it is the most sensible, the most healthy, in which to actually form a big commitment, like to get married or to buy a house together, or to start having children. And big commitments like that are most appropriately made in the commitment stage. And then following the commitment stage, we have the bliss stage, which is the stage of a relationship in which a couple can really feel supported in their authenticity by their partner and can really do the work they have to do in the world, whether that be having children and raising children, or starting a business, or doing big projects or philanthropic work, all of that stuff is most well supported in the bliss stage by the relationship. So I could definitely say a lot more about each of the 6 stages, but let's talk about the dating stage first, the vetting stage. It's called the vetting stage because this is the stage in which two people should be really finding out if this person who they're dating meets their standards. And in order to find that out, you have to have defined your standards ahead of time, and you have to be clear on what your non-negotiables are. And not only that, you have to have reached a point in the relationship with yourself where you're really able to authentically own and get behind your standards and to make them okay to have, recognizing that, a mismatch between two people's very important standards or non-negotiables is not necessarily a bad thing. It's good information. You want to know that. You want to know whether you should continue to invest in this relationship or if you should change the nature of the relationship. Maybe it should be a friendship, or maybe it should be a lower level of relationship where there's just less frequency of contact, less emotional vulnerability, and maybe a little bit more casual than something moving toward a lot more depth and frequency of connection like we have in romantic relationships of the closest kind. So I want to list out some examples of where our standards might be mismatched, just to give clarity around what this could look like. So one person might have a high desire for independence, a high need for independence and autonomy, while the other may have a really high and important need for emotional closeness and a lot of frequent connection. Another example is where one partner is very sexually adventurous, and the other partner has a preference for more emotional intimacy over novelty in sex. Another example would be when one person has a need for routine and predictability in the relationship, a really high need for certainty and stability, where the other partner really thrives in spontaneity and a little bit more impulsivity or perhaps chaos. Another example is when one partner has a desire for transparency and a need for emotional processing in the relationship, whereas the partner has a higher need for emotional minimalism or more of an internal processing style. Another example of a potential incompatibility would be where one partner has strong family ties and obligations, like a really high need for family connection, versus a partner who prefers minimal family involvement. Maybe they have more negative associations with family connection, and so that's just not where they invest their time, attention, and energy. It could create conflict and an incompatibility if one partner has a high degree of ambition and a very career-driven lifestyle, and the other partner has more of a preference for work-life balance and emotional presence outside of work. Another example is where one partner tends to be more socially extroverted, more a life of the party type, versus a partner who is more introverted, introspective, and has a higher need for quiet time and space. Another example is where one partner wants to cohabitate or share finances very quickly, versus a partner who takes a more slower approach to commitment and prefers more autonomy and independence around money matters. Another area of incompatibility worth considering and taking seriously is a difference in love languages. Maybe one partner is more touch-oriented in their love language and the way that they give and receive love, whereas the partner might be more words or acts of service oriented as their primary mode of giving and receiving love. Another one might be that a partner has a strong need for personal boundaries and a lot of space versus their partner who has a more merging style, more blurred boundaries, and a shared emotional ecosystem. Some of this could be rooted in enmeshment trauma and coming up in a family with more blurred emotional boundaries. And that could actually be an unhealthy thing worth working on. But it could also be that it's just a preference, just worth noting. Another one is spiritual or religious commitment. One partner might be very inclined to be spiritual or religious, and that might be a really, really big need for them. And they would not be necessarily very compatible with a partner who leans more toward agnosticism or atheism, a more secular worldview. When one partner has monogamy as a core value, they may be at odds with a partner who is more curious or has a strong preference for more non-monogamous styles of relating. It is definitely another incompatibility when one partner needs regular conflict resolution and repair, and their partner is more avoidant or conflict averse. And finally, when one partner values deep inner work and emotional growth, and their partner prefers more practicality and doesn't prioritize introspection much at all, we can really come up against this as an incompatibility. And so these are some really strong examples of how this can look between partners. And they're definitely things worth taking seriously. And when you're deciding whether this is a person who you should invest in long term, these are factors that seem to weigh very heavily. And they're not pathologies. A lot of times, even if they are rooted in patterns of insecure attachment, if a person is simply not willing or able to work these things out, they just become that person's personal truth. And those things should be recognized and accepted as such. You cannot change your partner if they do not want to change themselves. And so it's better to just recognize and accept these things and orient yourself to the reality of abundance. There are so many people in this world. And just because one person seems to show up with a lot of really desirable traits to you, they might have other traits that really represent a mismatch. And so you can still love that person and appreciate them for who they are, but it might be a really significant act of self-love to stay aligned with the truth of who you are and what you want and make choices in alignment with that. Otherwise, you will be choosing a life of chronic friction, of possible self-erasure, and eventual resentment in your life, which are not what any of us want long term. It's just a headache. It's a set of chronic headaches and a lot of really holding yourself back from living into what you really want for your life. And so while your partner might not be wrong for wanting something different, they might simply be wrong for you. I encourage you to consider these factors and use this list early in dating to assess fit beyond surface chemistry. And that's not to say that you should sit down on your first date and interview your partner for every single point on this list, but maybe find out the ones that rank the highest for you in terms of their importance and ask one question per date. And really listen to the answer. Really, really let yourself take that in and hold that up to your truth. You could also use this list consciously in a long-term relationship or the long-term relationships that you're in to clarify areas that need negotiation or recognize areas where you're not aligned and where it might make sense to divest a little bit more from trying to get your needs met in the ways that you hope to in that relationship, and maybe look for other relationships where you may be able to source those things. And while it's true that certain needs are most appropriately met in romantic relationships, like the needs for um, a certain depth of emotional intimacy and a certain depth of like physical and sexual intimacy, you can get other needs met for like the things that you enjoy doing, the other personality needs that you have, or more needs with around intellectual intimacy, or relational intimacy, things like that, in friendships, in family relationships, and really vet for those things in other relationships to see where you can safely source those things to the degree that you need. And finally, use this list with compassion, understanding that incompatibility is not failure. It's just something that needs to be taken seriously from a place of self-compassion and compassion for the other person. Constantly trying to put a square peg into a round hole is a recipe for friction and slowing yourself down in ways that are not necessary. You can move forward in your life with more ease and less friction if you align yourself with people who align with you. So, thank you so much for your attention and for the time you've taken to listen to my thoughts on this. And if you would like help and support in defining your own standards and non-negotiables for a relationship, or getting to a place where you can work through the fears that keep you from really owning your truth, I am available to help. My website is beyondbettercoaching.com. I have all kinds of programs and services that are designed to help and support people, single people looking for relationships, or people in relationships working to enhance and improve the experiences that they're having in those relationships. So thank you so much, and I look forward to connecting with you over time.